The Wisconsin Shoreline Inventory and Oblique Photo Viewer is an interactive map that allows you to visualize Wisconsin's Great Lakes shorelines and coastal bluffs to see how they have changed over time. The web address for the viewer is given here, and a link is provided in the video description. This viewer is the result of collaboration between many different contributors shown here. Funding for the viewer has been provided by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program. As we open the viewer, we see a map of Wisconsin with some default data visible on the Lake Michigan and Lake Superior coastlines. This map has both a qualitative and quantitative inventory of shoreline conditions. The viewer includes geolocated aerial photos of the coast from the 1970s to present, classifications of the shoreline and bluffs from the photos, and measurements of how far the shoreline or bluff has receded or moved back due to erosion, which is available specifically in southeastern Wisconsin. All of this data represents a snapshot in time, so be aware that current conditions may have changed due to the dynamic Great Lakes coastal environment. Any major or immediate concerns should seek professional assistance from an engineer, geologist, or other qualified professional. With that said, the information on the viewer can help gain a sense of how the coast has changed in the past and is still continuing to change due to the forces of nature and, in some cases, human actions. Understanding where and how much change has taken place can help us identify areas that need attention and improve how we manage the coast in the future. To orient you with the viewer, on the left, we have the different data layers that are available for viewing. You can scroll through the layers with your mouse wheel or by swiping up and down on a touchscreen. The layer legend is available by clicking the key icon here. We see that there are 2 layers on by default. We'll go ahead and turn them off for now. The About link takes you to descriptions of the viewer, data descriptions, and data download links. To get a sense of the information that's available in the viewer, let's zoom in on an area in Milwaukee County to see what the viewer can show us about the coast at this location. We can use the Shoreline shortcut to center on Milwaukee County. If we want to find a specific site, we can identify street names as we zoom in. Or we can change the base map and bring up a satellite view. This might help us find a site of interest. First, let's look at the historic photographs of the coast. As you can see, these start from 1976. Each dot on the map represents a geolocated image from a given year. If we click on a dot, it pulls up the image at that location. To get a closer look, you can click Full Size, which brings the photo up in a new tab where you can zoom in a bit. We can see here in the photo that in 1976, the coast is a tall bluff that shows evidence of erosion. It lacks vegetation, it looks fairly steep, and we see a few downed trees. To look along the coast, there are these handy arrow buttons which let you fly along to the next photo. Before you pull up a photo from a different year to visualize coastal change over time, it can be helpful to find a reference point to find in other images. Note the location of the parking lot as our point of reference when we look at other years. Now let's turn on the 2007-2008 photos to compare how the coast looks 30 years later. We can see the parking lot, so we know we're in approximately the same location. We can see that the bluff slope is more vegetated in 2007, which can indicate enhanced stability. We can also see this line of soil here in the vegetation that might be a place where there's been a local failure in the slope, where the bottom of the bluff has slid down, leaving that soil exposed. To know for sure, a site investigation would have to be performed, but using the photos, we can start to target those areas to focus on. Overall, though, the bluff looks to be in better condition in 2007. Now let's go to the most recent photos from 2018. We can use the arrows to find our reference parking lot again. Here we see the bluff looks pretty similar, well vegetated with no major changes. You may notice the beach has become narrower, likely because Lake Michigan is at a higher water level in 2018. Overall, the photos can be a valuable tool to quickly see coastal conditions and visualize coastal change over time. The inventory layers show classifications of the coast based on interpretation of the photos taken in 1976 through 1978 and 2007 through 2008. Characteristics like bluff stability, beach composition, and shoreline armoring were classified based on visual indicators in the photos. Like the photos, these classifications are essentially a snapshot in time and may require field verification on site. If we look at the bluff condition layer, we see that it's color-coded. If we check the legend by clicking on the key here, we see that green indicates moderately stable, yellow indicates moderately unstable, and red is unstable or failing conditions. In the area we were looking at with the photos, the shoreline was coded red for unstable or failing, which is consistent with what we saw in the 1976 photos. You can click on the line to learn more about its classification. Details include things like the status of vegetation and apparent slope failure mechanisms. We can compare the classifications from the 1970s with those done in 2007 and 2008. Here we see that in 2007, the bluff is coded yellow for moderately unstable, which is an improvement in stability over that time frame. Those improved conditions were indicated by the enhanced vegetation in the photos that we just looked at. If we zoom out, we can see that the relative condition of the bluffs along the coast, highlighting where areas of most concern might be for further investigation. Other layers in the inventory show us whether the shoreline has some sort of armoring or protection. Looking at the legend, it appears that this stretch of coast is unarmored, indicated by the gray none line for beach protection. We can click on this line to learn more about the beach classification. Here we see the beach appeared to be composed of sand and gravel. As we look south, we can see a marina, indicated by the red line. Even further south, we see more armoring, like a seawall here, shown in green. Overall, these inventory layers can give us a snapshot of some important coastal characteristics at specific points in time, allowing us to quickly take stock of coastal conditions, compare areas of the coast, and identify places we may want to look at in more detail. The viewer also provides bluff and shoreline recession information in southeastern Wisconsin, which includes Kenosha, Racine, Milwaukee, and Ozaukee counties. Recession is the distance a bluff or shoreline has moved back from the water landward, primarily due to erosion. To learn a bit about these measurements, we can click the question mark next to the layer, which takes us to the About page. Here we can see what parts of the bluff were measured: the bluff crest at the top, the bluff toe at the bottom, and the shoreline where the beach meets the water. The recession distance that the viewer shows is the distance and where these features were in the different historic aerial photos. You can read more about how the measurements were made on the About page. For now, let's look at the measurements. We'll start by looking at the long-term Bluff Crest recession measured between 1956 and 2015. Let's go to the layer legend. We can see that the recession is represented by the total distance the Bluff Crest has moved over the 59-year measurement period. Each individual dot shows the average recession distance for the surrounding 300-foot section of shoreline. The deep red color we see here indicates the top of the bluff has moved over 60 feet in that time period, while the lighter colors show that areas have moved less. If we click a point, it will bring up the actual measured values of how much the bluff crest has moved in this time period. We can also see how things have changed over a shorter time period from 1995 to 2015. If we zoom out, we can get a view of the whole coast within the region to identify the areas that have eroded the most in recent history. It's important to note that this information doesn't necessarily tell us how the bluffs will change in the future. That depends on a lot of unknowns with nature and human activity. What we can do with this information is better understand where and how much the bluffs and shorelines have receded in the past. That data can be used as a basis for prioritizing areas that need attention and inform possible scenarios for future recession so we can better plan and manage coastal areas and properties. If you want to dig into any of this data in more detail, all the photographs, data layers, and profile data are available to the public to download for free on the About page. In summary, The Wisconsin Shoreline Inventory and Oblique Photo Viewer is designed to help users better understand Wisconsin's Great Lakes coastlines and how they've changed over time. It's intended for anyone to use, including decision makers, planners, managers, and property owners. We hope that you find it to be a useful tool to keep in your toolbox.